film in the Roaring Twenties.
World War I had ended and soldiers arrived home. An economic boom in Western Europe and North America began. New fashion, music, and art hit the streets. But what about film? Did culture affect the film industry? Absolutely it did. Advancements in technology made moving pictures more impressive than ever before. Set design, costumes, and makeup entered a brand new era. Events in the world can be correlated to movies at the time. 1920. We all know the terrorist attack of America that has shaped modern national security. Before 9/11, the most devastating terrorist attack was in 1920. A horse-drawn cart carrying an explosive was detonated on the busiest corner of Wall Street. The attack is thought to have been done by Italian anarchists. The movie The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is about an Italian hypnotherapist who hypnotizes his clients and then murders them. This silent film uses expressionism to convey meaning. It features a dark and twisted visual style. 1920 was also a big year in psychotherapy. Behaviorism, the study of human and animal behavior, was a big topic. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is about a researcher looking into the two basic natures of man, good and evil. He creates a potion that turns him into an evil version of himself. Behaviorism gone too far? 1921. Britain receives mandate over Palestine. Also in that year, the Sheikh came out. A modern British woman defies her brother and takes a month-long trip to the desert to avoid a marriage she believes will be the end of her independence. She meets an Arab prince who falls in love with her, but she refuses to say the same to him. When the prince gets hurt, his friend informs her that he is not really Arab, but white. When he wakes up, she confesses her love. This movie was wildly popular at the time and made $1.5 million at the box office. British obsession with all things foreign, perhaps. The movie The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, directed by Rex Ingram, had a huge cultural impact and was the top-grossing film of 1921. The movie inspired a tango craze and fashion fads such as gaucho pants. 1922. The Great Railroad Strike of 1922 is a significant moment in America's history. 400,000 workers stopped working and about 10 people died in connection to it. Charlie Chaplin directed, wrote, and starred in Payday, a movie about a laborer whose wife demands all the money he gets on payday. He keeps enough money to go drinking sneakily in the night. What could explain the Roaring Twenties more than that? Labor, money, and drinking. Nosferatu is a German horror film that scared the pants off of society at the time. This film was an unauthorized adaptation of Dracula. A court ruling ordered all copies of the film be destroyed. However, a few prints of Nosferatu survived, and the film came to be regarded as an influential masterpiece of cinema. This staircase scene being one of the most iconic. 1923. Under the Robe, directed by Alan Crosland, is about a young man tasked with capturing a cardinal's enemy, but falls in love with the target's sister. Later in the year, the Catholic Church held a conference on industrial problems. Were too many assassins falling in love with their target's sisters? I jest. Also in 1923, the movie Within the Law, directed by Frank Lloyd, was released. The movie is about a girl who was wrongfully convicted of stealing. When she gets out, she decides to take revenge on the shopkeeper but staying within the law by suing him. Plot twist, she falls in love with his son. There seems to be a pattern forming. Before this movie came out, the American Law Institute became incorporated. The law shouldn't be a game, and yet there are so many movies who say otherwise. 1924. The City Without Jews is a 1924 Austrian expressionist film by Hans Karl Breslauer, based on the book by Hugo Betoyer. The film is centered around a chancellor who passes a bill in Austria that all Jewish people must immigrate away. The country suffers from this. Meanwhile, the daughter of one of the people who voted for this bill falls in love with a Jewish artist. What's interesting is that in a couple months of this movie, Hitler's Mein Kampf was released. The writer of the original book, Hugo Betoyer, was murdered by the Nazi Party, whereas the director joined the Nazi Party, escaping the same fate. Another movie from 1924 is The Navigator, a comedy film directed by and starring Buster Keaton, a love story aboard a ship that was sold to a small country at war. In 1924, many American ships were shipwrecked, one of the most notable being the Emma Giles. The ship collided with the SS Steel Trader on New Year's Day. 1925. Spiritualism was at its peak in 1925. Many mystics and frauds popped up all over America. Harry Houdini has exposed many of them in his day. The Mystic, directed by Todd Browning, is about a woman pretending to be a mystic to bamboozle a wealthy woman into giving her inheritance to her guardian. The Phantom of the Moulin Rouge was also released that year. It's about a character called Julien Boisel who, after losing his sweetheart to a blackmailer, lets Dr. Window to experiment on him with his mesmeric powers. Julien's spirit leaves his body, and so he plays pranks at the Moulin Rouge. Meanwhile, at the real Moulin Rouge, an incident occurred at a show when female dancers were meant to pop out of artificial cakes covered in real frosting. When the girls came down to the stage, the soles of their high heels got doused in cake cream and caused them to constantly slip and fall on stage, ruining the whole show. Mishap or phantom? 1926. The U.S. Marines left for Nicaragua in 1926. Tell It to the Marines, directed by George W. Hill, was a romance story of a Marine and a Navy nurse. The film made $1.6 million. I guess America missed their Marines. Also in 1926, The Better Ole, a World War I comedy drama, came out. In it, a sergeant discovers there is a German spy in his regiment. Many believe that this film had the first spoken word of dialogue, the word coffee. How American. 1927. In the 20s, jazz was big. Duke Ellington, a jazz musician, opened the Cotton Club in Harlem in 1927. The film, The Jazz Singer, reflects the widespread popularity of jazz music. Unfortunately, it also features the main character in blackface. This was also one of the first musical films. During this year, Reno, Nevada became the divorce capital of the world. The movie Children of Divorce is about a Jean and Ted who are in love. But when Ted proposes to Jean, knowing he's a child of divorce like her, she tells him she'll only marry him if he can prove he'll be faithful. 1928. In 1928, traveling circuses were on the decline, but circus movies were popular. Charlie Chaplin's The Circus is about a love story in the circus and made about $3.8 million. Also in 1928, Michael Curtiz directed Noah's Ark. It is representative of the transition from silent movies to talkies. Most scenes are silent with music, especially biblical ones, but there are parts with dialogue. The great volume of water used was so overwhelming, 600,000 gallons, that 3 extras drowned. Definitely a first in history. 1929. With so much economic prosperity, people needed somewhere to spend it. What better place than Broadway? Other than film, of course. In 1928, 264 Broadway plays were produced. The Broadway Melody, directed by Harry Beaumont, was the first sound film to win an Academy Award. The movie is about romance on Broadway. On with the Show was also released in 1929. Filmed in 2-strip Technicolor, the film is noted as the first all-talking, all-color feature-length film, and the second color film released by Warner Brothers. A common theme among all these films is love. After all the grief and loss of World War I, society needed these films to uplift themselves. Another thing they have in common for the most part is going over budget, especially the movies with new fashion and technology. Luckily, the economic boom meant many more people were watching these films. Fun fact, the highest grossing film of the Roaring Twenties was in 1925. The Big Parade brought in $4.5 million. The film is about a love story of a rich boy who joins the war and is sent to France. The world affected the film industry, and in turn, the film industry affected the world.